A lemon grows a pip, a yard will build a ship, and Satan, who is my master, said I will have you, Chip. Chip was toiling away in the boatyard. He was alone in a dark room underneath the ship. The waves washed gradually and elegantly against the boat. He minded nothing. He heard nothing, save the pitter-patter of his crewmates above him. He was in his own little world, daydreaming of money, fame, and women. Or perhaps money, infamy, and women. The pirate's life never sounded that strange or horrible to Chip, even though his mother, who always reminded him, or rather badgered him, of the ill doings of his father, also aptly named Chip, she would cluck and caw and ramble on about how his father was such a fool. He sold his soul for money, betraying the Lord above, and in doing so, eventually betraying his entire family. Before his thoughts could continue, the floor fell out from under him, or rather, he slipped humorously on the floor that he had been vigorously swabbing. His face met the wooden surface with a plop not dissimilar to the sound of someone placing a fish aggressively on a cutting board before filleting the creature. It was then he deviated from his normal behavior. Instead of standing back up and correcting himself and continuing his duties, instead he laid there, smelling the oak floor. His mind was very much in a fog, and he, at that moment, ceased to exist as a human being. He only thought of nothingness. This was due to him realizing that his life would be one of poverty, loneliness, and at the end of the day, averageness. He had lost his virginity to a housemaiden who charged him quite a sum. His father died poor, as did his father before him, both, of course, named Chip. He knew not how their deaths came about, but he could recall, when he was a young boy, one of the few memories he had of his father. He was always complaining about a rat. Chip never understood this, since rats were very common, and in no way, shape, or form were they really a threat to him or his father. But as he lay there, thinking of nothingness, while at the same time rebuking himself of his poverty and his status in life being born poor, it was then he heard something he didn't expect to hear. A lemon grows a pip, a yard will build a ship, and I will always have chips. It was then the sailor jumped up in fright and shock, and he saw, for just a moment, a strange figure. It was humanoid, but very much not human in any way, shape, or form. It radiated an obsidian aura that could only be described as an aura of despair and suffering. Its hands hung far beneath its knees like tree branches, limp and weak. Its skin, if you could call it such a thing, glimmered and shifted a strange crimson and violet color. Its face was vacant, yet it still held the countenance of a man, a woman, a dog, a bear. It seemed to have all faces of all things perpetually at the same time, and its eyes were blue and green flames, and when it winced or blinked, these flames let out strange sparks and embers that radiated all colors of the known rainbow, as well as colors that somehow defied the concept of the human spectrum. This figure is what Pip saw for only a brief moment. As he blinked and readjusted his gaze, almost instantly the creature was gone and replaced by a relatively thin and handsome older gentleman with long black hair and a black goatee. He wore a solid black suit, save for a rose-colored tie. Both of these shocking images were enough for any man, but there are still more peculiarities about this gentleman. In his left hand, he held a cast-iron pan. It almost radiated beauty, as if it were made of jewels, even though it was quite obviously just made of average everyday iron. Upon his left shoulder was a humongous roll of copper, easily worth hundreds of pounds. In this man's right hand, he held a large bucket that seemed to be filled with 10-penny nails. And lastly, on this strange gentleman's shoulders sat perched a small black rat. Although the metals were bewildering, this rat seemed evil, as if all of the hatred of men were put into a small furry package, given fangs, a few feet, and a tail. Chip instantaneously hated this rat, more than he has hated anything in his life before. Although the rat seemingly had done him no harm, and was no more harmful than any other rat. Although his hatred was plentiful, his countenance still stood of one who was very much awestruck at the strange man, his strange pet, and the strangely beautiful objects that he carried. Chip stood in a awestruck stupor for moments. This bewilderment and dreamlike state only ended when the rat met his eyes and hissed. Chip jumped in fright and began to back away from the strange man and the strange creature. As if on cue, the man spoke, reassuringly, in a voice as soft and smooth as silk. "My boy, don't be frightened. I'm here to change your life forever and give you things you would have never dreamed of, all for a very low price. As a matter of fact, it's not even a physical price. It's nothing you can see or feel or in no way, shape, or form even care about. You could say I'm actually just here to give you a few presents." Chip reacted to this with silence. He didn't move anything except for his eyes, which darted back and forth from the man's eyes back to the rat's eyes. He stayed silent and did so until the man continued. "My boy, you don't know me. We haven't met before, but I am a good friend of your father's, and actually, I knew your grandfather very well, too. And because of that, I decided I would come here today and give you this roll of copper. And it's not just any roll of copper, although I'm sure what you're thinking is you could sell that and make yourself quite a few pounds. No, you do not want to sell this, my boy. When you unroll this copper, it will continue to roll and never shrink. You guessed it. This copper is magic. And as a matter of fact, so are these nails here, and this little iron pan." As he hummed these sentences, he lifted the pan to his head and lightly tapped it, giving off a little dink-dink. Before the pitchman could continue his pitch, Chip interrupted loudly and aggravatedly. "Who the hell do you think I am? You trying to sell me something that's magic? Well, I bet you got you some magic beans in your pocket, too. They gonna make me a big old beanstalk, ain't they? and then I'm gonna climb that beanstalk, I'm gonna meet a giant, and I'm gonna take all his gold. Ain't that what you saying? What do you want from me? How'd you get on this ship, and how did you sneak up behind me? Damn near every one of those planks make noise when you step on them. How did you get down here? And more importantly, why are you down here? It was then the salesman's face morphed from one that was very much content and pleased to one that was shocked and almost frightened. Apparently, Chip's aggressive nature had caught him very much off guard. However, his shocked countenance vanished very quickly, and he regained his charming grin. My boy, please, calm down. I told you, I'm an old family friend. I've known you since you was just a pup. You know how many years ago that was that I seen you? Ooh, I swear, the day you were born, I could not stop smiling. I was so happy that there were more Chips in this world for me to see. Chip was taken aback by this statement. He still was concerned about how the man appeared before him, but now was very much convinced that this man in some way, shape, or form did know him and his family. After all, how did he know that his father and his grandfather were both named Chip? Even his crewmates were unaware of his family's creativity in terms of naming their seventh sons. Although reluctantly, Chip had nothing to lose, so he allowed the man to continue. The smirk that the man held grew wider. He obviously noticed that Chip had relaxed a bit, and now was willing to hear his pitch. All the while as he spoke, the rat glared at Chip, only stopping periodically to lick its little feet and rub his feet hands against his face. The man continued to explain that on top of the copper roll being endless, the pan was indestructible, and the nails could repair any damage to anything. The outrageousness of this claim left Chip bored and frustrated. He was now thinking to himself that his captain would most certainly give him a booting if he hadn't ended this conversation soon and gotten back to his work. Now listen here, fella. I ain't buying what you're selling. I ain't got enough money to pay for that roll of copper regardless of if it's endless or not, let alone the bucket of nails, and I have no use for another frying pan. I can't even cook. So why don't you and your wares and your little rat thing that keeps on glaring at me go ahead and try your pitch with one of the other crewmen. Maybe the captain actually has enough money or enough of whatever you want. Before Chip could continue, the strange gentleman held out his hand in a silencing gesture. He then placed the bucket on the ground, pulled out a single nail, and told him, "This boat you're on right now, it's leaking pretty bad, isn't it? Tell you what, I'll give this to you as a free sample. Take this nail, walk outside, put it in the boat, just 1, 2, maybe 3 little strikes of your hammer, walk away, go to sleep tonight, and then check the damage tomorrow, bright and early, just when the sun comes up. I bet this little boat that's all worn out and aged and useless, so useless that your captain is about to retire it, will be beautiful. It'll look like it never even touched the water. It'll look like it never seen a storm. And you know what? If you do that, I bet you your captain will reward you. I bet you he'll reward you good. And I bet you'll be real happy to take my offer after you just put this one little nail in this big old boat." Chip gazed at the nail for a moment, debating what he should do. Naturally, this was complete nonsense, but the insistence of this stranger was too much for him. So reluctantly, Chip slowly grabbed the nail from the man's hand, and before he could say a word, the man tipped his hat and silently, very silently, made his way upstairs and out of Chip's vision. Hey everyone, Old Drunkie here. I want to make a couple disclaimers. The first one is that this story is a unknown story written by an unknown writer. I say that because I don't think the internet has any idea who wrote it, and the person who made it famous, or moderately famous, enough to where I know about it, was Charles Dickens. He was told the story by his nanny when he was a kid, and I assume she didn't make it up, so we have no idea who wrote this. Regardless, it is in the public domain, so I can make my own version of it. I hope you guys are enjoying it so far, and stick around for the next part, where Chip discovers what the nails can actually do, and what taking this deal can do for him. Also, I want to let you guys know that I did not write this story before I started recording this. This has basically been me recording, pausing, thinking of what happens next, and then recording again. So everything you heard today was basically made very much off the cuff. So if I repeat a few things too often and say things in a weird way, I'm sorry, that's why. I didn't premeditate this, I didn't write it down, edit it, and then come and record it like I do with most of my other stuff. So with that being said, I hope you guys are looking forward to The Devil's Rat Part 2. Later, guys.